Good morning and welcome to Huddersfield Town's preview show ahead of our Emirates FA Cup tie against Plymouth Argyle. I'm David Threlfall-Sykes, delighted to be joined today by two legends in their own rights. We've got the Examiner's Huddersfield Town expert Steven Chicken and all-round Huddersfield Town legend, current club ambassador Andy Booth. Steve, Andy, thanks for joining us today.
Of course.
One place to start, I think, which was the big news that came out on Thursday evening, which is that the club finally completed the signing of Rolando. Boothy, I want to come to you first, if that's okay, on the back of something that Steven's done. Steve wrote a really interesting piece, I thought, about when you bring a player like Rolando in, who's obviously got talent but hasn't been able to establish himself in a team yet, that it shows a lot of faith in Carlos Corberán as a coach, because we're obviously backing that he can bring the best, that undoubted talent out of Rolando. I want to flip the question slightly, and as the only professional footballer of the three of us, that might surprise everyone that's watching, but you were. What was it that were the major factors for you as a player when you were moving club, and how big a role did the manager or the coach in charge actually play in your decision?
Morning, Dave. I think, to be honest, the manager has a big influence on it, or the coach. Back then, with me, it was always a manager. Now I know we have coaches and that. But when I was moving to Sheffield, David Pleat was the manager, and he had a big influence on my signing. I don't know if you know, but I played in the Ensley under-21 league team, which were the England under-21s, and then the players who were not in the Premier League. I played for both, but the players who were in the lower leagues, they were an Ensley side under-21s, which played teams like Italy, played teams in Europe. And David Pleat was the manager then. So I first met David as a 20-year-old playing in the Ensley team. And so obviously in 1996 when he came knocking, I already knew him. I'd been training with him, so I admired him obviously as a manager and a coach, and it was a big name throughout football anyway. So when somebody like that comes in for you, it's quite nice actually, knowing somebody so well thought of in football wants you to be at their club. So it really is it's a good feel. Obviously, everybody wants to be loved, and everybody wants managers to want them. So the manager coach has a massive impact, definitely. And also with me, Neil, there was a £2 million bid on the table from Crystal Palace.
Okay.
Which was about 7 months before I went to Sheffield Wednesday, and Neil Warnock were the manager. And for £2 million for where the club were then, it was obviously massive money. I think Ewan Roberts was the highest record fee, which was about 300,000. So, and Neil turned it down. A £2 million bid, which I can't imagine what the chairman and directors. Neil knew me as a person, knew me as a lad. Obviously, I'm a homegrown lad. I'd only played at Huddersfield. I'm a Yorkshire lad. I was still at home then living with mum and dad. And he knew it had been a completely wrong move for me if I went down to Crystal Palace and go to London. He said it'd probably ruin my career. So even though Crystal Palace were a great club and good manager, good coaches down there, Neil were looking after me. So going from the other side, looking at the coaches you're going to, back then the managers and coaches still looked after you at this side as well. So going to Sheffield, it ticked all the boxes for me. Playing in the Premier League, obviously at Yorkshire club, a very similar club to Huddersfield, but obviously on a bigger scale. So it was quite an easier option for, obviously, a fantastic transfer fee for the club as well. But for me, it was such an easy decision. It meant I could stay at home as well, stay and live in Huddersfield. So it was perfect for me.
On the flip side, and I'm not asking you to name names here, Boothy, because that'd be unfair, but in your career or with your teammates, did you ever hear of the flip happening where the manager, maybe reputationally, before you'd even spoken to that person, put someone off a move?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Oh, there's quite because players love and hate managers and coaches, and if you're in the team and you're playing and you've done well for the manager loves you. But there's other players that are out of the team, not getting picked, and some managers come in and get rid of them straight away. And obviously, football is all talk, and you do get to know what managers are like. So you've got to be quite strong in yourself and not listen to anybody else. You've got to take it for what you see, because you could speak to 5 different players and they'd all have 5 different opinions of the manager. I always go back to Neil Warnock. For me, you either love or hate Neil Warnock. Everybody who's played for him absolutely loves him, but players who haven't played for him, they'll say the complete opposite. So it is, you've just got to take it for yourself, because there's so many different interests and conflicts of interest between players, and sometimes even talking contracts, player might think it's worth a better contract than is being offered, leaves the club, and then straight away don't like the manager, and that's how it goes around. But then you speak to another person and he loves that manager. So it is. You've got to take it for what you see, and you've got to be strong. And I know nowadays it's completely different. I went in with my dad to Sheffield Wednesday and spoke to David Pleat, and it was practically, we're offering you this. That's what you're having. Now the agents go in it, but I still think it's so important for the player and the manager to meet and them have that chat to find out what each others like. And the work that our scouts get put in now and the backroom staff, you know exactly what kind of people they are, and because it's so important to get the transfers right.
I always think that's the hardest bit as well, because you never, it's like buying a car, isn't it? You're never going to ask the previous owner if it works right. And they go, oh yeah, it's terrible, you shouldn't buy it. They're always going to kind of sell it up. But and just on your point about dads coming in like yours did, I think the last time I remember almost like a dad acting as an agent was Peter Clark. Actually, I remember his dad coming with him, who was a tremendous fella, an ex-footballer himself.
Yeah.
We'll come to you, mate. Thanks for joining us this morning. It was your piece that kind of prompted the question, and like I said, I thought it was excellent. And you cited 2 really pertinent examples, certainly with the fan base at the moment, in terms of players that Carlos has certainly had a positive impact on, in Ben Hamer and Isaac and Benza. Like I say, I really enjoyed the piece, but in a sense, isn't that what all managers and head coaches should do? It might seem obvious, but that's kind of a big part of the job, isn't it? And certainly something we talked about when we brought Carlos here, that there's always a tendency to look for what you can bring in new, but it makes so much more sense to work on what you've got, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And realistically, every club needs to do a little bit of both. As you say, that was sort of a big part of the reason that the club decided to bring in Carlos was they felt like there were players like Isaac who were not lost causes and who the right coach could get something out of. And sometimes, as Boothy says, sometimes it's just a personality thing. Sometimes a player gets on with one coach and not another. But I think we've seen with Carlos that he is very keen to work with players who maybe haven't their careers maybe haven't fired before, or who have had hit a bit of a roadblock at the club, at town, as with Ben Hamer or with Isaac and Benza, or young players who are looking to make their first breakthroughs. And it just made me think about when we spoke to Lee Bromby and Phil Hodgkinson a couple of months ago, and Lee was talking about they want the club to have the right reputation and they want the club to be known as somewhere where you can go and get that opportunity. And as Billy says, players talk to one another, in a way that fans most of the time won't be aware of. So, I didn't know that Rolando Aarons was friendly with Josh Koroma, for instance, until I saw his first interview with the club on this YouTube channel. Just quick plug for you there, Dave. But yeah, players will talk to each other and they will pass information on, and I'm sure that goes back the other way as well. I'm sure you talk about how it's difficult to know what the personality is going to be like, and I'm sure that talking to players who have worked with that player before and saying what are they like and what sort of personality are they is a big part of that process.
I always was under the impression London was quite a big place until we started working in football. And what I found is that whenever we signed a player over the last 2.5 years, you'd say, do you know any of the lads? And they'd go, oh, yeah, I know Carl. If they were from London, they would know Carl and Grant. And like it's the same with Liverpool too. So every footballer from Liverpool knew each other. I don't know. I've got the impression these cities were quite big, but seemingly the football was quite a tight one as well. Boothy, you mentioned geography earlier and what Neil did for you there when Palace came calling. I was going to ask you about that because, again, in my experience, and I've been here 15 years now, up until it was Sean Morrison, and it was only a loan move, so it was different again.
Yeah.
But it became evident to me over that course of time when we were in League Two and then into League One, we never got anyone to Huddersfield Town that was from the south. Literally, almost exclusively, our recruitment, the people who were interested in coming to Huddersfield Town as a League One club were from the north of England. And I think London at that time had a really big pull for players. You know, it was like a place to go. How, in the end, how important was geography for you? Because you did have that one move, and David Pleat was obviously pretty central to that again. But once Neil had said that to you, was that something, a factor that always played in your mind?
Yeah, but it probably did, yeah. I've got to admit, I never thought about geography. It was all about football to me, and back then it was completely different. I know we're going back 25 years, but we just played football, and it was like it was never the player asking for moves or players wanting to change clubs. It was like you played for the team, and then if another club wanted you to come in or the club wanted to sell you, then it would totally down to the club. They had all the power. So it was more or less you play football, and then you might get a request to go and see manager or go and see chairman or have a phone call. So it was only until then when Neil came, and I'll never forget that word at the stadium, and in his office, and he called me in and he said, "Boothy, I've had a bid for £2 million for Crystal Palace." And to be fair, I felt stunned. I've got to admit, it was the first time I'd ever been in that situation, because I've been at Huddersfield for whatever year, 10 years, and never thought of it. And I've got to admit, I was speechless really, because you're thinking, wow, what do I do? What do I do now? I want to play for Huddersfield. Do I want to go to Palace? Do I want to, the club accepted it? And then he said, obviously, it's not the right move for you. He says, I've fallen out with the directors and chairman. It's been, but it's completely not right. And I've got to admit, that's when I started thinking, well, there is going to be a time, because scouts were watching me. There were a load of scouts coming. I'm thinking, well, now it's down to me. I might get the choice where I want to go. And if I did have a choice, I would have chosen Sheffield Wednesday. Still, it seems, you go back, geography would be great. Looking back, I wouldn't have wanted to go to London. Like I've always said, I'm a Yorkshire lad. I had Liverpool watching me for a long time. Roy Evans were watching me for about a year. So Liverpool, yeah, I'd have gone to Liverpool. But if Spurs had come in that time, saying that I'm saying geography, if Spurs had come in, yeah, I'd have gone to Spurs then as well.
Since you bring them up, sorry to interrupt you, can I ask you about Spurs? Because we've talked about it in the office in the past, and when you say that and you're a Yorkshire lad, but it was just about the football at that point, how different was the move to Spurs for you? Obviously, it was only a loan, but I don't know if your family went with you or if you went on your own, or I always remember the story you told me about the car that you turned up in, which I always think is a good one, if you don't mind recanting that one as well.
Yeah. It came out completely out of the blue. I was obviously at Sheffield Wednesday, and we were playing Southampton in the FA Cup. Obviously, the FA Cup today. And the goalkeeping coach, Steve Hodge, we always go for a walk before the game. We're in his hotel. Steve Hodge came to me and says, "I've heard that Spurs are interested in you. You're going on Monday." And I said, "No, that's not right, Hodge. I've heard nothing." "Yeah, you've been speaking to one of the scouts." I said, "No, I haven't. I've been talking to Bobby Smith." Well, Bobby Smith was with me at Sheffield Wednesday. Looking back, under David Pleat, whenever Wednesday, Warnock were talking to me to go to Sheffield United, and Bobby Smith rang me up and he just said, "One of your old managers is interested in taking you on a loan spell." And I just presumed it were Neil Warnock. So that Saturday, I found out it was Spurs. Bobby Smith never told me which club. So then I've got to admit, my mind started racing. And then Monday morning, got a phone call. I headed down M1 to Spurs. But the problem was, going back with my car, the problem was it was in January, and on Christmas Day I'd had a crash. I had a BMW convertible, and I had a crash, so my car went in for repairs. And the garage gave me a green 1.1 Fiesta Popular, a lime green one. And looking back, I can't even believe I didn't argue with it.
Yeah.
I just thought, well, it's a car, it'll do it. And then obviously I've turned up my first day in this Fiesta 1.1 green Popular car. So you can imagine what Spurs car park was like. In the cars that were in there were Bentleys, Ferraris, you name it, and I've chugged up. So, got a long story. On the first match day at Spurs, what you do, you meet in a hotel, you have breakfast, you have meetings, you have your pre-match, and then they all go in convoy to White Hart Lane. So George Graham was the manager. So George Graham leads the way. Then there were people like Sol Campbell, Les Ferdinand, Stefan Everson, Stefan Freud, you name it. So you can imagine the cars. So I'm chugging along in this green Fiesta Popular. And I didn't realise when you got to Tottenham, there's like a chicken run where there must have been 3,000 fans waiting for all players. They obviously knew they all came in convoy, waiting for cars to come through this chicken run. And obviously they knew that they got a new signing, a lad from Sheffield Wednesday up north. And I've come chugging along with in this car. And what you had to do, you had to drive up to the main entrance, and it was like a valet parking. So steward, you give the steward to the keys to the steward, and he moves your car. And the face on that steward when he saw 1.1 car, he wouldn't even get in car. Posh the word down at Spurs, he wouldn't get in car. And then obviously he drove off with it. After the match, my wife were down there. The fans were still there. She wouldn't get in that car, so she had to walk round corner. So I had to go and pick her up. And then about 3 weeks later, obviously I got my own car back, which I said a BMW convertible. And the steward took one look at it, and his face, and he says, 3 weeks at Spurs, and look at what you've changed to.
Brilliant.
And I honestly believe, and nobody asked why I was driving that car.
So, well, I'm going to say thanks for setting back stereotypes of Northerners down there about 20 years, mate, during your loan spell. That's fantastic.
Oh, they will have done. They'll have thought, it's grim up north, isn't it? To footballers up north. I mean, I played in Premier League then, so I can't understand why I didn't ask for a better car.
It makes for a good story on the preview show anyway.
Well, it does, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Steve, this must be life for you in the Reach network as well, mate. 1 minute, you get the loan call and you're down at Spurs. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the transfer window, Steve, as well, actually, because we talk a lot in our day-to-day jobs, and yes, we're only trying to think it's 9 days in at the moment, or 7 days in because it opened on the 2nd, but relatively quiet so far. There's a lot of clubs, understandably, making noise about being cautious with money surrounding the pandemic. Like we talked about in the summer. It must make it a bit harder for you guys in the journalistic business, because obviously transfer windows are big deals for you guys in terms of your readerships. Fans, understandably, uber keen to hear about possible transfers in and out and stuff. I suppose you guys have got to get a bit more creative at this point as well.
Yeah, just make stuff up. No, yeah, it's. I mean, we do what we can with transfers, and you don't want to go too big. You've got to find the balance, because my bosses would want me to pump out as much transfer content about any player that is possibly linked as I possibly can. But at the same time, I don't want to do that with a player who I know or have a good sense is not a serious target and sort of mislead the fans. So it's trying to find that middle ground where you can. And thankfully you do get enough real links that you can do a bit more with them, and particularly after they sign. Obviously any day that there's a new signing announced, like with Rolando earlier this week, it's sort of all hands on deck for us, and we're trying to get out as many pieces as we can as quickly as we can. And you've got to sort of take those moments, because people, I don't know if people realize, but the transfer stories are much bigger for us than anything to do with a game, for instance, which Sounds a bit backwards, but that's how it is. You know, I'll ask anyone who works in football writing, and the audience numbers always go up during a transfer window. It's what people are interested in, and you've got to try and fill both sides of that, because people want to hear about the rumours as well, but they also want to know if they're true. So yeah.
Can I ask Dave? Can I step in there? And it might be obviously that you could answer as well, Dave. I'm quite interested. Obviously, you've just said there, Steven, about rumours and that. You must have some rumours that you think are true, but you still sometimes you still print or still put on social media. What is there? Do you go and speak to Dave and say, look, Dave, and does Dave tell you the complete truth all the time?
Yeah, you're going to get drummed out of the magic circle here, mate.
Well, this is what I want to know.
I'll talk to Dave. I'll talk to other people as well. Some of them, I mean, everything I'll take to Dave pretty much. Even if it's a slightly daft one and I think there's nothing in it, I'll take it to Dave just in case. And sometimes if it's just sort of one person has tweeted about it and it's really tenuous, often that's as far as it goes. I won't even run anything on it. My sort of golden rule is if someone texts me or people are asking me about it on Twitter, I think that's the point where you have to think, well, I know this is nonsense, but I have to run a story that says that it's nonsense because people keep asking me about it. So that's kind of behind the curtain there. And obviously you're getting, you know, I talk to other people as well, and you get little drip feeds of stuff. And sometimes I think, well, I can't imagine that's true. And then that turns out to be right. And sometimes you think, I can't imagine that's true. And it turns out, no, that is correct. And it's a real target. So, yeah, go on.
Steve, to add to that as well, like, it isn't necessarily a case where, like, Steve's, I'm not just saying this because he's on the preview show and we're friends or whatever, but Steve's really good at his job and he can use his own nous half the time to figure out whether things are right or not. The other thing I'd say is that we talk pretty much daily about Huddersfield Town. You know, this is what we're, you know, it's not about transfers specifically, but just about what we're about as a club. You know, our strategy for what we want to do moving forward, what we want the club to look like. You know, that big piece that Phil and Lee, that I had a very small part in that with Steve after the last transfer window, set out a lot of that. But we talk daily about just football, you know, it's a fantastic thing to be able to do. But because of that, you know, Stephen's well informed on what we think, you know, how we operate as a club and what we're thinking and what we think good looks like and what we think not so good looks like. So, you know, there's no secret. I'm not breaking any secrets here by saying that, you know, our preference here at a club, not exclusively, but our preference is to bring in younger players who are hungry, they've got something to prove, they're talented, we can help develop them, that kind of stuff. So if we suddenly get linked with a horde of 35, 36-year-olds, then Steven probably has an idea that it's probably not got loads of credence to it. He might still have the conversation with me because, like I say, it's not exclusive, and there will be points where bringing some team makes sense. When we brought Richard Stearman in January, that made sense, and Steers has done a good job for this football club. So it's not exclusive, but the point I'm trying to make is that when we talk as much as we do, you know, Steven obviously has a good idea of what we think good looks like and can probably draw his own conclusions when he's getting people texting him and asking him whether we're signing X player for £8 million tomorrow. You know, there's a level, and that helps us as well as a club because my personal view is that I don't think it would be right for the club to comment on every single transfer rumour that comes along every day. That's not really our position. We can trade as being the first official word on things. That's kind of where that's our position, in my view, in the environment of transfers. Steven has a different position, and rightly so, because fans are understandably interested in rumours and all that kind of stuff. So they kind of fits together really well. And from my point of view, it's good when not just Steve, but Radio Leeds, the guys we work with closely, the Yorkshire Post, are informed on this, because the last thing it wouldn't help us if Stephen was wildly going off and backing random rumours that have no basis in truth, you know. I also think a lot, and this isn't a grand surprise to anyone, but I think a lot of rumours originate from agents who have got their own agendas to try and push their players.
It's when you see the list of... It's when you see the list of clubs, that's when you're always like, agents here. It's when you see there's 3 names and you think one of these is going to be plausible. And 2 of them, they've just sort of plucked out of thin air. Sometimes they're not even the right position. you know it's a player where you've just signed you've just signed 3 goalkeepers and they'll link you with another goalkeeper. It's like, that one's not right. And yeah, sometimes that's just like, oh, you're not paying attention. You needed to pick someone else there.
But out of interest, when in your career, did you ever get approached by a journalist to kind of tell them stuff?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
not asking names, I'm just interested. Yeah, because obviously that's another source is people in dressing rooms that journalists might know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I can remember at Sheffield Wednesday we used to have a press conference on a Thursday. So like we do, you pick a player who'll be their turn to do the press conference, and it was my turn this Thursday, and I did it all fine, and then I was going out of Sheffield out of the training ground, and it was absolute pouring down, and this journalist just collared me, and it was just walking with me, and it was just really just chatting, just because I'd done press conference and it was all off the record, and he just mentioned something about Paolo Di Canio and Benito Carbone, the 2 Italians. There were 3 of us playing up front, and he just said it's something like, "Oh, how do you feel about Paolo and Benny?" And like I give him, and it was just chatting. It was just a conversation, like me and you would be, Dave, and I just thought he was interested. And I just said, Paolo, fantastic players, unbelievable players, great professionals, great trainers, unbelievable talent, and an honour to play with. But then at the end I said, but sometimes we need an extra ball on the pitch to get it off them. And that and just a little quip, a little joke. And then Saturday, I came to the game on the Saturday, and Peter Shreves was the manager, and he called me into his office. This was coming to a game. He says, have you seen the Mirror today? And there was a double-page spread of me slaughtering Benito Carbone and Benny. And then from that day on, you learn lessons, and from that day on, you don't trust journalists. Obviously, Stephen, with the Examiner and Mel Booth and all.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, but you can trust, and your lessons. And then, so you hear, like Alan Shearer used to get slaughtered for giving just random boring answers. But because you've got to be careful what you say, and if I said something to Stephen or Mel and it wasn't right, they won't pinch it, they won't do it. But some of these journalists do, because it's a story for them. And I learned, I was 23 then. I learned very quickly. Just give the journalists you don't know, give them just the basic answers. And it's wrong, that, because nobody wants to hear the basic answers. They want to hear the juicy. But until you get that trust, you won't give the journalists it.
Yeah, I think we've sort of, people, as you say, people complain about footballers giving boring answers, but I completely understand why clubs and agents and players themselves would train themselves to do that, to be honest, because you don't know how it's going to be twisted or how a joke might be taken the wrong way, and we try and find the right tone where we can, and try not to blow things out of proportion. But a quip like that, I probably would have seized on that and put it in a headline, but I wouldn't have made out that you were slagging him off for it. Is the difference, I think. Yeah, it's
funny, Boothy. You listen to you talk, and I always find it fascinating. You've had such an amazing career, and I sat here, and I've known you now for a long time. I never knew you had a chance to go to Crystal Palace before we spoke this morning. So if I was sat with Stephen's hat on this morning, that would be my headline. You had that chance, that's really interesting, and I think people will be interested in that. And the other thing is that Steve, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, but you've actually sat on the other side of the coin as well. So you obviously worked at club level at Doncaster Bells before you started this side of it. So you kind of, I suppose, can appreciate it from both sides. Yeah,
it's obviously a totally different level, and I've not got people texting me every day like you do, Dave. But yeah, I mean, you want to make sure that you're getting the best coverage, but you don't want to be sort of lying to people or misleading people. And it's all about building those relationships with people and making sure that stories are told sort of the right way. And that, you know, sometimes, and you'll confirm this, Dave, there's been times where I've run stories that people at the club haven't liked, but I'll always try and take both sides and put forward the view that I think is honest. And I think with transfers in particular, it's hard to do that without knowing what the club's stance is.
I think that's an important point to say as well, because obviously, like Boothy said, we've got on well with the Examiner for my entire 15 years, going back to Mel, to Doug Thompson, to you, Steve. You know, there's never been a problem there. But that ain't to say that we haven't had disagreements over things over the years, because we've each got our own purposes and agendas to fulfil, and that's fine. You know, as long as you can look people in the eye to your point, Boothy, and think they're being genuine about it, then I don't think there's ever an issue. And that example you cited doesn't feel particularly genuine to me from what you've said, whereas that would be an issue, you know, but you can always understand other people's points. I'll move this on now, but I wanted to talk to you both about Danny Grant, because obviously this is potentially the first game this weekend or today that he'll be eligible for. Boothy, I looked through your career very quickly, and I'll throw some names at you. Alan Quinn, Robbie Ryan, Derek Geary, Damien Delaney, all people you played with who came from the League of Ireland at different ages, granted, so some a bit younger than perhaps Danny has, but it is a trodden path, isn't it, that in the English leagues that you do get people who come from that, and there's plenty of other examples who didn't play with you, who've gone on to make great careers, some playing in the Championship now. It's a trodden path that Danny's making, but it is an adjustment for him to make too. Yeah,
definitely. It must be so difficult. And he's coming to a new country, It's hard going to a new club. I only did it twice, but it is difficult. You feel like the new boy, but I was staying at home, so at least I had all my family around me. He's coming by himself. He's coming to a new country. Completely new surroundings. So he's got to factor in all that with obviously concentrating on the field, and because he's here to play football. So as a young lad, well, it must be so difficult. I never did it, but I can imagine how hard it must be. The lads you mentioned, when you go back to Quinny Delgiri and Owen Morrison at Sheffield Wednesday, they all came together. So there were always like 4 or 5 young Irish lads together. So they'd have them in digs. I don't know if Danny's in dig. I don't know, but they'd be there. So they'd have like a landlord and a landlady looking after them. So they'd have like a mum and dad to cook the meals, to sort the car tax out, and all the things they had somebody there to do. And going back further, when I was an apprentice, obviously we had Owen Hand as manager. So then you brought back Jason Byrne, Brian Byrne, Campbell. I can't think of his first name, but he was a little bit older. So then he came over. But then there were Ken O'Doherty, there were Mick Byrne, Kieran O'Regan. So then there were 3-4 older Irish lads in the first team that looked after him as well. So all the people that have come from Ireland that I've known have all had familiar faces and people who are in the same situation. So for Danny, it'll be difficult for him, but he's coming to a good club. We know Huddersfield Town's always been a family club. It's always been so welcoming. Every player I've played with who's come to the club loves the club. Most of them stay in Huddersfield. A lot stay in Huddersfield, stay in the surrounding areas. So for him there, it'll be easy for him to settle in because he's got a lot of good people around him. And I say, hopefully tomorrow we get a chance to see him. What we don't want is to put too much expectation on him, because from where he's come from, and I've heard a lot of good report, a lot of great reports about him. I was talking to somebody the other day, said you've got an absolute steal. He's going to be an absolute fantastic player, but we've got to give him time. We can't expect too much because it's a big step up for him, and we've got to this year, this end of this season. Don't know how many times he'll play. It all depends, obviously, on Carlos and how well he does. But we've got to give him a year to develop, to get to know the club, to get to know the players, and also with the fans, I always go back to having no fans in there. That's a massive impact. So we've got to, let's not expect too much from him. Let's see what he can do and see how he develops in the next 6 to 12 months. I'm sure that's what Lee and Carlos will be looking more for.
I'm going to have to stay with you, Boo, because either Steven's staying very still or he's frozen. I think it's probably the latter. But and just on Danny, I think you've articulated that really well. And I think that we've gone to pains through what Lee has said, through what Carlos has said, to say he's going to need time. Exactly. We need to be patient. But it's difficult, that, isn't it? Now you can sit back as a football fan as well as an employee of the club. You look at players who come in, and as a football fan, it's really hard not to judge people on the first viewing, isn't it? So it's that first impressions thing, and whether it's football or anything else, first impressions leave a big impression, whether they're good or bad. And I think you look at the moment in the team, we've got Ryan Schofield and Rahmani Edmonds-Green, who've both had tremendous starts to their Huddersfield Town careers. But you've still got to think that this isn't it for them, So all the strengths and weaknesses that Rahmani will have right now, he'll get better. He's 21 and he's had a tremendous start to life as a championship footballer, but this shouldn't be it. There's still a lot of upside to come, and it's difficult, isn't it, when you're a fan and you're sat there at the moment, sadly watching it via a laptop screen like we're talking now, not to make that instant judgment on a player like, oh, I like them, or they're not good enough, or whatever. It is a challenge, isn't it, to think that way? It
is, and I've got to admit, Dave, you're right. I do exactly the same now, and I've said we've got to be patient with him. But if the poor lad has a bad game tomorrow, that's your first impression, and then it seems he's got a bit of an uphill battle. And I'll go back for my experience. I played 2 or 3 games, came on as sub. I started Swansea game, did absolute nothing, and I could hear the grumblings of the fans, and I'll never forget. We played. Neil Warnock took us down to Torquay, and just for like 3 or 4 days, and we played a friendly at Torquay United. And I went in dugout, and there's a lot of Huddersfield fans come and watch us everywhere, but they're the soul of the club, like they follow us everywhere, and they love every player and that. And Neil Warnock, I was sub, and Neil Warnock said, "Boothy, get changed, you coming on." This was like with about 40 minutes to go, and I heard one of the fans go, "What we're bringing him on for is useless." And straight away, I'll never forget. I don't know who it was, but I heard it, and I thought, straight away you're on a downer going on pitch. So then I had to then start and try and rebuild the fans' faith. So yeah, we've got to give him time, but it's also important, like you say with Rahmani and Ryan, they've got to keep performing. Now they've done it, we can see what they're doing. So they're at that level, they're at a high level. And it's consistency now. If you start to drop, the fans will notice, and you've got to be consistent every season to keep, because they're a tough crowd. Every fan's a tough crowd. We've all got an opinion, and sometimes it's nice to be sat in front of the screen watching it than playing, because you know that a few bad games and your ratings and your favouritism does drop.
And it says everything, Boothy, that for all you went on to achieve in your career, that one person at Torquay's comment has stuck in your head for this like 20, 25 years, like you said.
Yeah.
Steve, welcome back. We thought you were keeping really still there for a second. But, it's good to have you again. We're just talking on the back of Danny Grant, and I'll put this to you in your journalistic front as well. How difficult it is to keep that mindset where when people get on the pitch that this isn't it for them. So we use Ryan and Rahmani as an example that. We can talk all we want as a club about the necessity to give young players time to improve. But as a football fan, as a journalist, as anyone that's into football, once you see a player once on the pitch, you do make a snap judgment, don't you? It's impossible not to. It's that first impressions thing, whatever it is. I suppose in your job too, you've got to keep an open mind to that kind of stuff, particularly when you're working and you're covering a team like Huddersfield Town, where we're making a big noise about the fact that we want to develop players. You've got to almost keep an open mind, perhaps more than you would at, I'm going to use Man City as an example, where there is, you've got to be at it straight away.
Yeah, you've always got to be fair. And, I think there's, I don't particularly enjoy doing player ratings. I don't think they're sort of the best tool for saying how players have done, but, people like them and you've got to do them kind of thing. And you've got to be willing to, people who listen to our podcast will know Dave Hardwick and I are big fans of Romani's, big boosters of his. But if he has a bad game, you still have to be willing to say he's had a bad game. There's no point in sort of going, no, he's great, and likewise the other way. There might be a player who sort of drives you, up the wall throughout the season. But if they then hit a good run of form, you've got to be willing to say, actually, do you know what? They've been good recently. So, yeah, as you say, being open-minded, I think, is the thing, and trying to be fair and honest. And to be honest, I always thought I would, before I took this job, I always thought I would come into player ratings and be like, right, well, what's happened before is kind of gone. It's just this game I'm concentrating on. And you try and do that as much as you can. But you also sort of, because you know what players' different levels are, that like what someone else would see as a 6, you're like, no, they're capable of way better than that. That's a 5 for them, or vice versa, and you don't want to be in a position where you're slating a young player. I think that's certainly one thing. If it's someone who's coming on making their debut, or someone who's 3 games into their career, you're not going to treat them the same way as you would someone who's got 200 games under their belt, because it wouldn't be fair to do it. And similarly, I think sometimes the same thing goes the other way. If you've got someone who's, a bit of a club legend at the end of their career, and everyone sort of knows that they're in a bit of decline, you don't want to go in 2-footed on them either, because you're not saying anything that people don't know. And, not that you want to go in 2-footed in anyone, but you might just take it a bit easier on people because you know that their capabilities are here higher or lower at various stages of the career.
And you'll have felt this, Steve, I know, but I'm always surprised at how much attention footballers pay to player ratings in newspapers. And Boothy, did you read them all? Because that's probably, when I see the lads down here on a Monday, they mention it to me, and it amazes me constantly that it's such a big deal to them, if that makes sense. Perhaps I'm being naive.
No, Dave, you're absolutely spot on. Because I can remember, I'm going back to Mel Booth. Mel used to mark, and we'd be and players would be there. We'd get the examiner, and we'd be looking at all his marks. And if you got a bad mark, I tell you what, you were furious. Or because if you had a good game and Mel give you a 6, and you think, hang on, I would a 7 there, or an 8, or vice versa. If he gives you a good mark, you thought I had a bad game. Oh, I've got away with it that time. And I can remember, and this is stupid. Sunday mornings, obviously, all the player ratings were in all the newspapers. I used to get up on a Sunday morning, 7:30, go to the news agents and get all the newspapers to see what marks I'd got. And looking back, it didn't make any difference because it's just one person's opinion. You knew how you played yourself. Your manager knows how you played. But they were important to you. And there were times where I'd be looking, and I think you always look more when you had a good game. You're thinking, I'll be good. A 5. I got a 5 that game, and I'm thinking I've got a chance of getting an 8, or you never get 9s, but thinking if I get an 8 and he's giving me a 5, and then you look for the editor's name, you look for the journalist's name, and you remember him. And there's been so many times where I rang Mel Booth up asking what game he'd watched because completely different to my opinion. So players really do take him seriously.
It's the dirty trick of the trade really is that journalists are almost the worst people in the stadium to be giving out player ratings, because we're doing, like, on a match day, I'm doing a live blog, I'm doing the player ratings, and I'm doing a match report, and I'm working on all 3 of those throughout the game. So sort of the last 15 minutes, you're barely watching. Which is why late subs, I always just give them an NA, because it wouldn't be fair for me to try and pass a judgment on him. So every single game, for the 5 conclusions, I'll often at least watch half of the game back, or I'll watch it on fast motion. And there's always 2 players who you think, oh, I got that totally wrong. I gave them a 6 and they were an 8, or the other way around. They did get away with that. Actually, they were worse than I thought on first viewing. So, yeah, we do get them wrong, and sometimes you stand by him, to be honest, and then other games you look back and you go, no, I got that totally wrong.
The worst job that you've got to do, Stephen, I think that genuinely, it's your equivalent of our picking the music on match days because you're not going to win. So your player ratings is our picking music on match days because it's so opinion based that you can't please everyone. It's just impossible to get right, if you know what I mean. So that's
we let the fans do it as well. So I always have a look myself to see what the fans have given and see where I might have gone wrong because generally, if you average the two out, you get something close to the truth.
Absolutely, guys. I'm aware that.
Sorry, Dave. I always noticed them fans ones. They've always got favourite players, and the players always seem to come up higher than how the game was. But that's it. It's all about opinions, isn't it? And you've got to get there. Like we're going back to Danny. You've got to play well to get the opinion, to get good favour from the fans. So silly as it seems, starting all back from your question, going back to player ratings, it all adds up and it all goes to the same thing.
Absolutely. Guys, as tends to happen when I step in for Adam on this, we're running massively over. So I'm just going to finish. We've got to mention Plymouth before we go, and we've got to mention today's game. That whole business, Obviously, cup ties are cup ties. It's 90 minutes on the day. Plymouth Argyle, really good team, really good manager in Ryan Lowe as well. Obviously, promotion recently. This is going to be a tough test today, Steve. Yeah,
they're doing all right in League One for a team that's just been promoted. Obviously, Luke Jeffcott in particular is absolutely banging him in at the moment. His minutes per goal return is pretty phenomenal. And you always know, I think, when you're a higher division team playing against a lower division team, that they are going to sort of raise their levels to try and get that upset. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think interesting as well to see what Carlos does with the team. He's hinted that he's going to sort of give a few players a rest and give other players an opportunity to show what they can do. And I think everyone will be keen to make the most of that opportunity.
Absolutely. But you've experienced Christmases and we were talking about this off camera the other day about where you've played. I think it was either Christmas Day, Boxing Day, or it were 2 consecutive days around that time as well. It wouldn't be a giant surprise to not just see Huddersfield Town, but see quite a few teams take this opportunity to change the team a little bit and give some other players opportunities whilst giving some of the lads who played a lot of minutes a little rest. And given the schedule, I mean, you've lived through that kind of schedule, maybe not even as extreme as it has been due to the pandemic. It does add up, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does, yeah. And I think Carlos would be totally right to rest a few of the players, especially this year. Like the matches they've had, there's been, I want to say the other day, like we had probably about 4, maybe 5 Tuesday midweek fixtures between August and Christmas. God knows how many it seems like they've been having them every week. So, and then you've got the Christmas period on top of that, which is so difficult. So yeah, you can't blame any manager, especially this season, to rest some of the players, and it gives the players who are on the fringe a chance. And sometimes that's it's better because you gave the young lads, and I'm not saying the senior players are not hungry, but no disrespect to Plymouth, when you're playing Plymouth at home, there's quite a bit of pressure on Huddersfield because we were expected to win. So it gives these young lads, or whoever he picks, the lads on the fringe, a chance to show what they can do. And if they do well, they get a couple of goals or get an 8 out of 10 if we're going back to markings. It's difficult to leave them out of the team for next week. So it's their chance to stake a claim in the league team. Absolutely, and you can't recreate the pressure that they will feel today. That's where these things are ideal. As good as you can make the B team fixtures or whatever you're looking to make, you can't replicate the pressure of having to win this game and having all these fans watching you. So it's a great opportunity, like you said. Guys, I'm sorry I kept you so long. Andy, Steve, thanks so much for joining us here today. Final word to all the Huddersfield Town fans that watch. Thanks for tuning in. A reminder that today's game is not on iFollow HTAFC. It's not an EFL game, so it's not on iFollow. Instead, it is completely free to watch on FA Player. That is the FA's own version of iFollow. If you go on htafc.com, we've got full instructions on how you can watch via FA Player. There's also plenty of information on the FA website too. So please make sure you get that set up early,
There is a registration process you have to go through. It's dead easy. You should be fine getting on there, but make sure you do it as early as possible and just read all the information you can. Thanks again for watching us this afternoon, and good luck to the lads in the game at 6 o'clock.